My name is Nakaya. I'm 15 years old and I'm representing Team Free Ride. And the name of my poem is Freedom. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. Freedom is what we need. Life is real, it's not a dream. Why can't they just set us free? Locking us up doesn't make us weak. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. No place big enough for holding all the tears you're gonna cry. I wanna be free. I wanna be me. I wanna be whole. 'Cause your mama's name was lonely and your daddy's name was pain. And they called you Little Sorrow, 'cause you never love again. How can they keep me? I wanna feel the breeze. I'm gonna be strong. You ain't got no one to hold you. You ain't got no one to care. If you only understand it, nobody wants you anywhere. Locking us up makes us stronger. We want to be treated fairly. We want justice. We want our broken wings to fly again. So why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly.
My name is Oscar, and I'm representing Team Free Right. And the name of my piece is Survive the System. System, like sentence can't take it, so fake it, you're now a mister. So many shoot, rob, lie, get jammed and become a Christian. Only the toughest lace it, associate with the races. The weak wait and impatient, race, and keynote, something I thought you would want to know. I've been in the position, the 21 consecutively, so many birthdays and holidays I spent in a population of 10 unsegregated. We mixed from different neighborhoods. Nobody understood how it really feels, not leaving the 16-room monitorized, 15 camera type, emotionally fight demons inside. Angel outside, visitation only lasts 45. Let's match it to the 45 the minor got because he was system lied. And the system lied. Moms in the courts couldn't take it. It was like retaliation. She couldn't fake it, so in public cried. They asked poor mama, stay strong. He'll be back in no time. She screams and yells. On the ground she fell. And asked God, please give my son a bail. Double sentence and reception was confused. Things got hectic. All them years he couldn't help it. Yes, he felt it. He calls it life. That's how he dealt with it. Thank you.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, gender nonconforming and trans deities, welcome to another episode of the Hoodoisie. We are Chicago's only underground live and live stream news show and podcast, bringing you Block Optic and radical perspective on culture and politics. And we are keeping it radical in the time of Corona. We teamed up with Southside Weekly to bring you Pandemic Issues. Pandemic Issues are weekly episodes where we give you the analysis and stories that local big media is not. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa, pronoun they, them. And I just shaved for the first time in 3 months, human beings. Introduce yourselves, my co-hosts.
Hey everyone, this is Jackie Serrato, editor-in-chief of the Southside Weekly. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
I'm Charles Preston, audience engagement manager for Injustice Watch.
That's right. And Charles
pronouns
is having...
he, him, his.
Ooh, you froze a little bit, Charles. And if you tuned in when we went live, you were hearing poems from Free Right Arts and Literacy. And that's because this evening we are talking about kids in cages, both incarcerated and detained youth here in Chicago, as well as immigrant youth in detention that are also here in Chicago. It's not just happening on the border. Today's guest, we're so excited to have. We have long-term youth incarceration and education activist, Amanda Klonsky. Let's give it up for Amanda. Show your love with some likes and some emojis. We also got the program director of Free Right Arts and Literacy. Let's give it up for Elgin Bokari T. Smith. And from the Little Village Solidarity Network, we have Alberto Vasquez. Woo! How we all feeling, everybody?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I think that this is the most kind of like down tempo, low energy show we started out on, precisely because I think the topic is so heavy, and one of the things that actually makes us feel kind of that's a little bit of a healing moment is the awesome work that you all are doing. And so I kind of want to start and introduce you all to our audience by hearing some of that. So Elgin, you're the program director of Free Write Arts and Literacy. Can you tell us a little bit what Free Write Arts and Literacy is and what you all do?
Hi. So, Free Write Arts and Literacy, we are a non-for-profit that's been around since the year 2000. We teach visual arts, creative writing, and audio production inside locked facilities. We do not work for the jail. We actually strive for abolition work, but we do partner with spaces for us to be able to do our programming. I hate the word programming, workshops. We create creative spaces partner with young people so that we can help them become the authors of their own stories. We do publishing, we do galleries and exhibitions. We also have a workforce development program, which is called Free Write Sound and Vision. We teach young people how to set up sound for shows. And we also have a cohort of young people that are called community navigators that are also learning training to be able to go and teach workshops and help, cipher the next world of generational builders and creative entities that are coming out of there that are well aware of the environment. Our goal is to empower young people to be able to make decisions for themselves. We found out very early that young people we're not here to save kids, right? We are here to work with them so that they can make decisions that are safe for them. And everything that we've done in Free Write Arts and Literacy has been a challenge from the young people that we are working with. So everything that we do, from arts workshops, from the writing, the literacy programs, all came from the work that we do since the year 2000, which started off as a tutoring program and then transformed into other different methods for young people to be able to express themselves and tell their stories.
Wow, Elgin, you twice in our editorial meeting last night and tonight, you were like, "Yeah, I hate the word programming." How come?
I don't know, man. It's just something about that word. It's like programming is like, hey, we're trying to change you or whatever. But I like the word program, workshop over program, because a workshop is like we're actually doing the work. A program is like I'm trying to instill something on you in the hopes that you will, in the hope that my instillment is going to change you. And it's something that we found out, especially from some of our alumni. It's not them that has changed, it's the conditions that have changed. And we need to continue to work towards changing and helping conditions of the people that we are serving in this. The work that we do is a service that we're trying to provide. And I'm not trying to program anybody. I'm trying to work with people.
Well, I mean, so even that idea of like what Free Write Arts and Literacy does, and like young people being able to speak for themselves, right? Like it's all kind of grounded in this like notion of like self-expression, right? And so, what are the young people at like Free Write that are in these sites of confinement? What do they have to say?
Well, I don't like to speak for young people, so I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll play a piece by a young student who I am proud to say is out. And has been doing amazing things while they were in Free Write. They were working on their first chapter book that they, just went to town with. It has illustrations, has I think it's like almost 30 pages or something of just like all poems. So I want to present work by a young man by the name of Frankie. And he was participating in a lot of the bomb when he had wrote this piece. So I'm going to let him speak and then we'll jump back into it. So without further ado, the name of this piece is called Justice, and it's by Frankie.
My name is Ricardo. The poem is called Justice, and it's an excerpt from my book called Natural Life. They say 14-year-old can't handle liquor. When I was 15, they told me my mind didn't have the capacity to smoke a cigarette. 16-year-olds are not capable of driving on their own, they say. But when I was 16, they were offering me 45 years. How am I capable of living in a cell, fending for myself, but not living at home alone on my own? They're offering me 3 times my current life's length, but they say my mind isn't fully developed. So how could they throw my life away before it fully started? Under 18, you're not an adult. They say 16 charges in the dealt, 2 years gone. How many more do I gotta lose to prove the justice system is wrong? Where's the rehabilitation? Minor charged at 16, convicted for 24 at 17, gets released when he's 40, lives 75% of his life behind bars. They're trying to manipulate our minds, call us kids, and then hit us with adult punishments. Split up the ones jagging the time from the ones making the best of it. You'll see we're not all the same. We all don't want to inflict pain on the others. Some of us treat others as we treat ourselves. I want to show the state that we are rehabilitated so they can stop charging minors as ATs. I want the law to change so I don't got to see another family go through the same struggle mine did. My mother barely sleeps knowing her son can get life and get put to rest in prison. I believe in justice and think people should get a fair punishment to learn right from wrong. But if you give a minor 45 at 16, released at 61, what does he honestly learn besides jailhouse rules?
Damn. And that was a student that, when was that poem written?
That poem was done in the year of 2018, and it was submitted for Louder Than a Bomb, and which is the biggest youth poetry competition, which is headed up by young Chicago authors. Our young people have been participating in Louder Than a Bomb through recordings. I think since the inception, to be honest.
Wow.
So every year we go in with a team of young people who express themselves, and that's like one of the ways, because as when it comes to the work of free write, it's one thing to show up in a space that is oppressive, to show into a space where you're not able to really speak your mind, where you're constantly told to be quiet or stay in compliance, and then you can come to a space like free write, and then we, through our maneuvering and our time of being able to put into that space, we have been allowed it a little bit more of, I guess you can say, leeway to be able to have a safe space for young people to express themselves. So it's one thing for them to try a new thing like writing or art or anything like that, but young people need to also be shown that there is another option, right? So
Right.
what do you do when a young person gives you that, right? It's a constant asking of permission with a young person. Like after they write something, it's like, what do you want to do with that? Okay, so let's type that piece. All right. Well, let's record it. Okay. Would you like this to be in a competition? They say yes, right? We get permissions for this piece to be shared. It goes off to this competition. People judge it. They get. I take a recording. I bring that back to that student, who often probably thought I was lying. And then I come back and show what people about their piece. And then they get the score and they're like, wow, that was dope. I would.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, next time I want to try this again. It's just free write is that little bit of in between that allows that continues to perpetuate that young person to higher levels of acceptance and higher levels of exploration besides the things that they were once introduced to. I think it's important to just say, no matter what, we all at some point have been in conflict with the law, and we've all had, in all of our different lives past, could have led us in a certain situation. I'm a young man from St. Louis, Missouri. I could have easily been in jail. You know what I mean? Like easily.
Right.
But I have been presented with different opportunities that have allowed me to be the person that I am today. So I'm using what I got to be able to pass that on to a young person. And if they so choose, can try out other options, you know.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, Elgin. You got the next one, Charles?
Alberto. Yeah. Alberto, Little Village Solidarity Network, known for organizing tenants, known for organizing and defending residents. Can you tell us how did this all come together? How did the network come together?
Well, basically it started, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, it basically started like about a year and a half ago at a place called the Boulevard. There was a gamut of different people from the neighborhood, as well as like the Northern Lawndale community that would show up to the Boulevard, which was basically like an occupation of like a space right by a coffee shop that was like part and parcel of beautification and gentrification. And there was a lady that would sell tamales in that area, and she was about to be kicked out by the people that were actually thinking about expanding and putting like benches in that area. So what we did was counter like their beautification process with like a much more communitarian view. Messages of autonomy, of like autogestión, like, you know, just liberation. And it was basically a whole like it was just different people, right? From like IWOG, it was like people from like what now is comprised Little Village Solidarity Network, but also people from a variety of different like radical organizations, and even people that are like mothers, fathers, and children showed up to this place. So it was basically an occupation of like maybe about close to a few weeks, if not maybe about a week or so. And after that, we basically formed a Little Village Solidarity Network. And what we would do is basically take on cases of workers that were due unpaid wages. And basically what we would do is draft like a demand letter on their behalf. And after that, we would basically like deliver that to the boss, like en masse, right? So we would take like about maybe 8 to 20 people at any given location, depending on the boss, right? It could be like, you know, a laundromat, it could be like a restaurant, or it could be a bar, and we would just go there en masse, and we would actually like read the letter out loud in Spanish and English, and read the demand letter as far as like the amount that's due to the worker, and like give that person like a week or two to pay up, right? And if they didn't pay up, then we would just up the ante by doing a phone zap, right? And if that didn't work, then we would actually pick it like right around like the vicinity of that like store, and we would just like get the result. Like they would usually cave in because they didn't want to lose any money, right? And with the tenants, we basically like took cases of people that were like in the process of just going through about to get kicked out, or people that were actually like just staying at their houses for a prolonged amount of time, or rather their apartments. So what we would do is actually give them like counsel on a legal basis alongside an attorney, and provide like the community support, right? That was actually necessary to enable them to prolong their stay at any given location and actually receive money, right? On the basis of the RLTO, which is actually like, you know, the law in the state of Illinois, so that they could actually like find themselves like cash for keys, like get like anywhere from like 3,000 to like 7,000, in excess of like maybe 8, 9, or 10,000, so that they can get that relocation money and find an apartment for themselves. And that's kind of work that we've done. And recently we've just been focusing on like the Heartland Alliance campaign. And we've just been like slowly but surely like just, well, maybe linear's like the wrong word here, but you know, just taking these sequential steps forward, right? And building on each victory so that we can take on the behemoth known as Heartland Alliance, right?
Yeah, we'll hear more from Heartland Alliance. And for all you out there, you can Venmo Beto at some point for this like sequence, for this like just kind of like 101 on community-based campaigning and direct action. Let's meet Amanda. Jackie, how about you?
Sure. Hey, Amanda, good to have you on the show.
Hi, Jackie.
I know some of your family because I've been on the Hitting Left with the Klonsky brothers.
I saw. I am a big admirer of your work and your journalism. Thanks for having me here.
So I know that you've been involved for a couple of decades working with incarcerated youth. How did you first get involved with that type of work, and what has been like the most eye-opening aspect of the work that you do?
So first of all, thanks again for having me. I'm a career educator, and I've worked for most of the last 2 decades teaching and running education programs in jails and prisons and detention centers. First, together with Elgin, actually, as a program director at Free Right Arts and Literacy. So I'm so proud of that work that has continued for now more than 2 decades. And it's so moving to me to hear Elgin's reflections on the continuation of that work. I also recently completed my doctorate at Harvard, and I was writing about the educational needs of young people held in adult jails and prisons in the United States. You know, here in the United States, in most states, you're called an adult, right? The theme of the poem that Elgin just played for us, when you're 17 or 18 years old, in some states as young as 16. You're sent to adult jails and prisons. So that's not the topic of our conversation today, but I think it's important to know that when you're hearing about the crisis of coronavirus in jails and prisons and detention centers, that many children are actually held in adult facilities in the United States. And of course, biologically and scientifically, they're not adults, but because they're Black or brown or poor, the criminal legal system calls them adults, right? When I was 16, no court would have ever called me an adult, right? So that poem that Elgin played from one of our students at Free Write really made me think again about that issue of injustice. Anyway, we went to work in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center all those years ago as a group of educators and writers, poets, who understood our work to be drawing on the liberatory educational tradition of Paulo Freire, of the Freedom Schools in Mississippi in 1963, where organizers set up schools that were rooted in the idea that literacy is not only learning to read and write, right, which you needed to be able to do in order to vote if you were a Black voter in Mississippi in 1963, you know, because of Jim Crow laws, but also that literacy is the ability to critique the world, right, to push back on the social conditions and to change them. And so we claimed that tradition at Free Write and said, we believe that our students who are detained and incarcerated need to learn to read and write, right? But they also need to be able to use their language and their literacy to change their social conditions, right? And to change the conditions of their oppression. And so that was really the origins of this work, and also my own work in this field, which has now gone on for a couple decades in many other confined settings, jails and prisons, and youth facilities. And so I think it's important to know a few things about the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center in particular, where Elgin's students are, where the student whose poem you heard is, right? That young people there are between the ages of 10 and 18 years old, right? You can be detained or incarcerated in Illinois as young as 10, although apparently at the moment there are no 10-year-olds in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center. The youngest student is 12, right? But when I was there, we often had many 10 and 11-year-old children. And the age of adulthood was a couple of years ago raised from 17 to 18 in Illinois. So now when you turn 18 on your 18th birthday, you get transferred in the middle of the night to the Cook County Jail. Another important thing to know about young people in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center is that they are awaiting trial. Right? They're pre-adjudication. So they have not, for the most part, been convicted of any crime. So they're children in a period of crisis, right? In a global crisis for all of us who are afraid, who are away from their families, their friends, and their parents, the people who would normally take care of them. And many of them are there and have already been told they can be released by a judge, but have no other place to go. So they're awaiting placement in a shelter, a foster care placement, or a treatment program for like drug or alcohol addiction. But because our community services are so thin and so poorly funded in Cook County, very often a kid will get released and then stay several more weeks while they're waiting for a place to go. And so those are the kinds of young people that we were working with in those years in the detention center, and who Elgin now teaches.
Amanda, just for our audience, when if they are convicted of a crime, where do they go?
So when you're pre-trial, when you have not yet been adjudicated, you in our system, you're supposedly innocent until proven guilty, right? That's the law of the land. Mm-hmm. But of course, we know that many people are held in the Cook County Jail for months or years awaiting trial, right? Adults, and that youth are held sometimes for months or years awaiting trial in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center. And then once someone gets convicted, if they get convicted, right? Some people are found innocent, but people who are convicted get transferred to a juvenile prison in Illinois, to one of the Illinois youth correctional facilities.
Wow. Okay.
So, Elgin,
And,
can you tell us about the conditions in which these youth prisons and correctional centers are pre-COVID? I know you're very familiar. You've been in there, but can you paint a picture for our audience, like what conditions children, what was like the norm of these sites, the norms that you see regarding these facilities?
Sure. So I'll talk to you about what's happening right now. First of all, there are right now 196 youth in detention in Cook County. And of those, one is, as I mentioned, just 12 years old. For the past 10 weeks, we've been sounding the alarm because detention centers, jails, and prisons are fast becoming the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States. We know the Cook County Jail was at one point the largest single source of the pandemic in the United States. They're saying 1 in 6 cases of coronavirus in the state of Illinois can be attributed to the Cook County Jail. Children in juvenile detention are living in really close quarters in a closed circuit airspace. There are no windows that open. You can't really sanitize things in a juvenile detention center to the degree that is necessary to maintain proper sanitation during a pandemic. It's always dirty. It always smells bad, right? Elgin will tell you our students are always complaining about the smell, right? They're living with terrible nutrition, right? Very little access to sunlight, poor ventilation, and all the germs that exist in that place. It's a petri dish, right? They circulate. So everybody who works there gets sick. When anybody gets sick, we're all getting exposed to the same germs. And, you know, the American criminal legal system holds 2.3 million people in prisons, jails, and detention centers, and also in psychiatric hospitals in the United States. And they don't live under quarantine, right? We know that people who work in the detention center come in and out every day, right? That means correctional staff, vendors, healthcare workers, educators, and other visitors who have to work in the institution carry those viral conditions that exist inside the detention center back to their homes and their communities. And so those very unsafe, very unsanitary conditions that our children are being exposed to there are also coming home with the people that work there and pose a threat to everybody. And youth.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say youth are particularly vulnerable, right? We have to remember that those are children who are living in rooms that are the size of half of a parking space for a car, with a concrete platform for a bed, with a 1-inch vinyl mattress on it, no pillow, right? Nothing on the walls. And often they're in those rooms for 22 hours a day right now, because how do you practice social distancing in a jail or a prison? So those were the conditions before the pandemic. They were allowed to go to school downstairs. They were allowed to participate in free ride and other activities, go outside, work out. But now, given what's happened, those kinds of movement and activities have been taken away. So even more restricted than we were before, and more terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's so horrifying hearing this, because I'm even thinking about just some of the conversations we were having yesterday. And, you know, I want to ask about the Heartland Alliance thing, but I think, Elgin, one of the things you said yesterday was this thing about these are still just kids, right? Yeah. Like, you're like, man, like they're just like every other kid. And I think about that because, like, you know, my family used to go to Mars Italian Lemonade Stand all the time. That's right there on Taylor Street. We pass by like, you know, that hot dog stand that's right across the street from Taylor and Ogden. And I remember my aunt, every time we'd go, she'd be like, you're going to end up there. That's where all the bad kids go. Right. Like, and like, it was like this way, because I was a badass kid. Right. But I think about that because, like, we see so many ways the way Black youth are kind of criminalized. Right. Even the way they talk about protesting and looters right now is infantilizing them. Right. They're opportunistic. They're just kind of like, you know, they're just out of control, kind of certain type of stereotypes that are deployed on youth. But you kind of been working with these young people. Can you describe, like, you know, I think speaking to what you just said, it's like these kids are just kids. But actually, like what you were saying is like they're fucking brilliant too, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, so far, if you've been listening to any of the pieces, that's why I've been having them speak for themselves instead of me about who they are. I think one of the first things that a lot of people, so like yesterday, the question was, what are some things people should know? And I feel like, especially the first time a person comes in to the jail to see the kids, you know, the first thing that they notice is like, wait a minute, these are these are kids. It's like, yeah, yep. They're just like your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your little brother. They're the same. It's nothing different except for they've been put in a situation that is real fucked up, and now they have grown ass people judging their lives and potentially be putting them in positions where they won't be able to, all their most developed years, like those years that really, really matter, you know, they won't get those social skills being in that space. They will learn order. Just like Frankie said in his poem, what would a child know if you're getting sentenced and you're supposed to get out at 45? What do you... I have a cousin who spent a lot of his time in jail and still has memories of me at the age of 3. You see what I'm saying? It's a time capsule there.
Right.
He only thinks about everything that has happened before he went in. So he has no knowledge of the person that I've become, of who I am, anything like that, because he's relived every moment of his life before he got to that point, right? So as far as, you know, like the young people, just remember that they are students and they're also trying to develop. They're also trying to learn. A lot of the things that we learn, that we try to work with our young people on, especially after they are upon release, because I think one of the major things that's important for this particular conversation when we talk about kids in jail is what happens to young people when they are out or when they're trying to figure out different opportunities, right? So we were talking about yesterday a little bit about how young people, after being incarcerated, the rate of them going back, right? Because there's so many other rules. You know, like a young person usually gets their clothes, this little sheet of paper, and then some other stuff, and then they send them on their way, right? Hopefully they will give them some materials that they can use. Sometimes young people are so damn happy to just be out, they just out. Like, whatever, I'm gone. Oh, this little paper, tear it up, keep on rolling. That little paper was going to tell them what school they have to go to because they can't go back to their regular school. They was about to tell them what kind of resources they could possibly use. But if you just threw that paper away and nobody actually talked to you for real during that stuff, then you don't know what to do. You can't find a job. Often you re-release back into the area that you were in, and nothing has changed, and everybody looks at you differently because they just saw that you went to jail. So they're just like, oh, well, I don't mess with that. And everybody's on your back about that. Probation officers is what we talked about yesterday with Ms. Klonsky. You know what I mean? It's like the probation officer is sitting there. Anything that kids will get put back in jail for going to Popeyes because they went beyond their space that they were supposed to go to.
Can I build on what Elgin is saying for a second?
Course.
I think it's important for people to know, Charles asked earlier, what's important for people to know about what the conditions were like before the pandemic. I just want to say, you know, I study human development and youth, and we know that all adolescents, that hallmarks of typical adolescent development, healthy adolescent development, involve self-expression, right? It's very important to children of this age, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, to how they wear their hair, what it signifies about them, what kinds of clothes do they wear, right? What social set do they run with, right? That's how they identify. Those are healthy signs of adolescent development, self-expression. All those kinds of self-expression in a detention center have been taken away, right? You're wearing a drab uniform. You can't style your hair the way you want to. Girls have to put their hair in the most they have is one of those like crappy rubber bands that you would get off of the newspaper, right? There are opportunities to identify with something new or healthy or positive outside of whatever got them into trouble in the first place, right, are all taken away too. How do we learn to make healthy choices or positive choices or to develop new identities if all of our choices have been taken away, right? And we have to remember that the majority of children in the detention center, both girls and boys, have experienced sexual violence, right? Have been raped, have been abused. And so they've had this experience of having their bodily autonomy taken away, right? And now they're in an institution that replicates the dynamics of child abuse, right? Where your choices are taken away, where you're not learning to heal by learning to make choices for yourself and having autonomy over your body, right? All that stuff is getting taken away from you. So we know that the detention center is in and of itself counter to everything we know about how to help young people who are the most vulnerable to heal and recover from trauma and to learn to make new choices. We know something else too, and I think this is really telling from Elgin's stories about his relationships with his students, that our young people in detention and in prison really need healthy relationships with adults, right? They need to learn to have healthy relationships with other people, right? Young people who've been abused especially really need to have experiences of respectful, healthy relationships with adults, right? And so having those experiences, all young people learn through relationship, right? And so taking those relationships away is the worst thing we can do to a child if we want them to grow up to become healthy and to make better choices. So what happens now, right? So we've already limited those relationships. We've already put them into institutions that replicate the dynamics of child abuse that are extremely hierarchical, in which you get punished for absolutely everything, right? And many of them are there on technical violations of probation. So like Elgin said, you went outside the parameters of your probation area. You didn't go, it used to be, you didn't show up at school after you got arrested in school in the first place, right? You don't want to go back to school, right? All these kinds of technical violations of probation that are not crimes, but that mean a probation officer can recommend to re-detain you and put you back in the detention center, interrupting your schooling, interrupting your relationships with your parents, taking you away from anybody who nurtures and cares for you. And so we've come to see that this is a really bad way, right? This is a really good way to guarantee that you've destroyed a child's life, that you've kept them from graduating from high school, that you've prevented them from moving forward in their education. So we're trying in our own small way through Free Ride and other kinds of programs to programs, Elgin, I should have said workshops.
It's a person.
To interrupt that work, but also we recognize that young people themselves have the capacity to grow and to change the society, right? And I think we're seeing that this week and in the previous weeks in Chicago, that these same young people are also rising up, organizing, protesting, and showing us that there has to be a better way to organize our society.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's exciting to see kind of the way young people are rising up, and it's also just like so horrendous in many ways that we do confine youth, right? Like the way, and not just like in the detention centers like that, but also the way the school to prison pipeline, these other ways. I think one of the ways that's kind of really grabbed a lot of attention recently is immigrant detention, right? And we know that immigrant youth kind of grow up with so many anxieties when they're undocumented and kind of cut off from normal development in so many ways. I think when we think about immigrant detention and youth and youth in detention, the slogan "Kids in Cages" conjures up these images of young people kind of locked up along the border. But the reality is that's not the only place they're at. That actually there are kind of undocumented immigrant youth being detained here, in Chicago through Heartland Alliance. And so, Beto, I want you to break some of this down for us, because I think that most people don't know. I said this to somebody on before the pandemic hit, because first of all, like I'm a fan of like Little Village Solidarity Network. I talk about you all the time. Whenever people are like, what's some of the organizations we should go to? I'm like Little Village Solidarity Network. Been trying to get you guys on the show, but like, you guys were already tipped off and involved in the Heartland Alliance stuff right from the get. And so I think one of the things I think our audience would want to know is like, how did these immigrant youth end up at Heartland Alliance? And what's been going on there, and what are the conditions that they're surviving right now?
So I would basically have the starting point of the basically the way that these children are actually put into captivity is through an extension of colonization, right? So the inception of it starts right there, and but just encapsulate it into not go on for a long time. All these kids are basically categorized in two different ways, right? They're either called unaccompanied or separated, right? So that's the way that they actually classify the children and actually compartmentalize them, and therefore just take them to the really big like they call them the albergues, right? Like for example, in California, in Florida, and also Texas, and these are only temporary, right? So these temporary holding places are actually like just like the way that these children would actually get to places like Heartland Alliance, by which there's like about 100 or in excess of like 110 like detention centers like all throughout the country, and they're actually held there for a longer period of time, right? So what they say is that there's no way to actually like access the information, but that's a total lie, because some of these kids, actually a good portion of these kids come with like, you know, information privy to the names of the family members, like an aunt or uncle, if not like parents, right? And if they're from Bangladesh, they have like extended family's information on them. So they actually like just create like this pathway, right? Which basically has this inception of a prolonged colonization that like by way of like social liquidation, right? Makes them like end up in this like very severe, detrimental, and dire situation in which social liquidation takes place, right? And their children as young as the age of 2, and they're supposed to be let out by the age of 18, but they're basically deported back to their country of origin. So, yeah, there's.
And how does the Heartland Alliance piece get involved?
Yeah, so they're basically like contracted through the federal government. The statistics, the figures may have changed, but when I last looked at them, they usually get like somewhere in the ballpark of like $150 million or more. It could also be like somewhere between like in excess of like $1 billion, if not. I know for sure like $150 million, like contracted through the federal government to actually do this kind of work of holding immigrant children in captivity, so to speak.
So Heartland Alliance, a nonprofit here in Chicago, has a couple of sites. One of them in Bronzeville, which is where has been a site of. Am I correct? It's in Bronzeville, where a site of some of the protests to free the youth is receiving millions of dollars to keep immigrant kids detained.
Exactly. Yes.
And so when you say social liquidation, it starts speaking to like some of the conditions, I think, is what you're kind of like, you know, what you're kind of addressing. And can you talk about what that social liquidation looks like? Yo, because once you start saying colonization and social liquidation or social death, right? Like Orlando Patterson, that is my shit. But let's go. Yeah, but can you talk a little bit about what social liquidation looks like?
Yeah, so there have been reports of children actually attempting to escape. Some have actually attempted to commit suicide. There have been people that I've spoken with on a personal level that like pretty much have like this like mom and pop shop like right across the street that have told me on a personal level that they've seen children attempt to escape, and the cops just go and grab them and take them right back. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, the children that are there basically between the ages, if I'm not mistaken, of like maybe 14 and 18 years old. I could be mistaken about that, but that's like the ballpark figure of the children that are there. And yeah, as far as I know, they're basically like, you know, inculcated to like assimilate to American culture, right? Pretty much like the board schools were created in such a way to actually deprive indigenous children of their indigeneity, right? To take away their language, to take away their customs, to take away probably the most important thing aside from the land, obviously, would be their cosmological vision, right? And their connection to one another, as well as the land. So I think that's like part of the entire process of like making these children into Americans, so to speak, right? But in essence, depriving them of citizenship, right? Or residency, and already like labeling them as criminal before even attempting to trying to get like residency or like a green card or anything like that, right?
Beto, I think it's interesting that you bring up language and how a lot of these children are labeled as unaccompanied minors or separated minors as if they were orphans, right? Do you know if the majority of these kids like actually have connections to other people in Chicago or the Midwest, or why exactly are they up here?
As far as I'm aware, like they like were basically like transported to like different parts of the city. And I think in order for a family, right, to actually go and attempt to like just try to get a hold of the children, there's like a sum of money of like tens of thousands of dollars to try to like transport fees and to try to actually get a hold of the children so that they can actually like facilitate or attempt to like expedite some sort of cases, which is really rigorous like legal process that involves a lot of technicalities, but sometimes that does happen. And yeah, like these children are basically like taken from the camps in like the south and west, and that's how they end up in the city. As far as like the logistics of it, the procedure, like how they actually like decide to go about like allocating the children in specific like sites throughout the nation, that personally I'm not privy to. There's like a lot more information on lvsolidaridad.org. There's like a compilation of research that's been done that's really extensive, it's really thorough, and there's actually like a lot of references from like really credible like sites, and like the research is validated, so people are more than willing to look at that if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting too is like, we've already known like that there was a report when kind of the immigrant detention kind of started, to the child immigrant detention kind of started ballooning and intensifying under the Trump administration, that, right, like not only are immigrant youth subject to some of the stuff that even Amanda says happened in detention centers for citizen youth, right, like here on Taylor and Ogden, like sexual abuse or physical brutality from them. They're also deprived, right? There was stories of the children being unallowed to shower or bathe, having to being in soiled pants. But then there is also one of the things I keep on thinking about is how even in this immigrant detention, so many of this youth have been lost, right? There was a report about how many young people have been unaccounted for, that they've separated from families through family detention, and that placed into foster care or things like that, and that kind of got lost in the system, which is bizarre. And it really, when you talk about this aspect of colonization, it really reminds me of the 60s scoop that happened in Canada, in which the Canadian government went into indigenous communities and stole, broke up families and stole the youth. Many of them got, were lost throughout the system, ended up in abusive foster and adoptive homes, foster care and adoptive homes. And so what is the work exactly that La Villita Solidarity Network has been doing, outside of Heartland and to confront this?
So we've been basically like operating under the rubric of abolition. So we're not attempting to like reform like any the specific sites, right? Like we're not looking for better beds. We're not looking for like improved like sanitary conditions, although that would be great if they did provide that. But we're basically looking for ceasing of the operations of Heartland Alliance, and for them to actually close down all those detention centers. And anything less than that would be unacceptable for folks in Little Village Solidarity Network. And so basically what we've done is let people know. Right? Mm-hmm. So different organizations do their part to actually like accompany us in a process of like protest, of let's say just making the news and research much more widespread. So in that sense, we're actually operating under the model of like solidarity, but also building like, just alongside like other activist groups that want to spread the word. But there are individuals and people like within the organization itself, that's basically pushing forth like abolition from this specific site of struggle. And what we've done is actually gone to like the house of David Sinsky, and we've actually gone to these different sites and picketed, we've protested, we've done an array of different actions that would actually increment and intensify the kind of pressure to let them know that we're serious about actually getting these places shut down, right? And yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's totally different from like other facets, right, of like the prison industrial complex, where there's like an array and plethora of like availability as far as like, just research, right? The specific like source of injustice is pretty much like put to the wayside. It hasn't really been brought to the foreshadow of it until fairly recent, as far as like the legacy of prison abolition is concerned. And there's also like a good amount of like Garifuna children from like Honduras,
Right.
that are also part of this process of being put in captivity in these different places as well. And there are also children from Romania. There are also, as far as I know, like a good amount of children, perhaps like coming from I think I did mention Bangladesh. But yeah, it's basically like just trying to highlight this and bring this to the forefront, right? Which is something that's been mentioned on Univision. And Univision has actually stated, as far as I'm aware, or Telemundo has actually stated that thanks to the protests and just people making the news like widespread through social media, like they've actually found it favorable to actually see people out in the streets, right? And actually call for like the complete shutdown of these specific sites, which makes it part and parcel like possible, right? To get like other sites like, juvie, to get like, women and like men's like prisons shut down as well, because it's all part of the same system, right? Even though there's like different intricacies which are involved that make this like separate from that.
Yeah, and like right now, right, it's like then COVID hits, and these kids, I think Amanda mentioned it, and when she was last speaking about, they're kind of completely isolated. But Elgin, Free Right is, I work for Free Street Theater. That's how me and Amanda even got connected through our mutual friend Koya Paz. And this whole time I've been
Free Street.
right. But Free Right is one of the only organizations that's been allowed to maintain a relationship with the youth that are in detention right now. And so, what does the doing through virtual programming? What has that look like, and what is the how are the conditions that young people are surviving right now, and what is your what is the programming, what are the workshops looking like right now, and what are they producing?
Word. So as you can see, I've completely transformed my studio space, bat cave at some point, but it's like I'm currently working in like my own musical studio. So with us being able to work through programs like Zoom or what was the other thing called WebEx or whatever. So with the Illinois Youth Prison, I've been working. We're doing classes through WebEx, and through the JTDC, the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, we've been doing classes through Zoom, which is so much easier, but because WebEx is a trip. And I mean, like, it's okay. I've been using the technology that I've been privileged with to be able to work with young people doing writing workshops. We usually have been presenting them with like different poems, also meeting young people where they're at. This is a really weird time to be working with young people, especially incarcerated. I will say this, and the weird reason is like we've just started a new contract to work with the Illinois Youth Prison Chicago, IYC Chicago on Western, and we've been working with them, and it's like it's been different because usually, especially in the JTDC in the Juvenile Detention Center, we have our own classroom space, so it's a whole different feel. We still, I mean, yeah, it's cameras, the guards are there, but in that room, when a young person comes in, we try our best to make sure that they feel welcome. They see art all over the wall. We have computers. As weird as it sounds, even having a freaking pencil. Like, kids are giving golf pencils in classrooms. So imagine, like, and that was like one of the main things. Like, this is usually the first thing that youth see is when they come into a classroom of ours, they're like, oh, it's a pencil with an eraser? Right? I know it don't seem like much, but if somebody's like, hey, do some math with a pencil this big, are you gonna want to do some math? Like, for real. Like, What is it?
Write a poem or anything, right?
Yeah, like what am I gonna do with this little bit of pencil? So it's already like we're introducing young people into a different field. We have our own culture in our classroom. Sometimes the guards get a little bit more relaxed because we're able to actually cultivate a space that is nurturing. So it's like, as in, I say nurturing instead of control, because sometimes people are like, oh, you control your room. No, it's nurturing. We'll have a conversation. Now, young people that come to our class who have been in free write for a while, we don't even really introduce what free write is anymore. Our students give off the language of what it is to be in free write. Matter of fact, a lot of our youth recruit students to come to free write. We only get 7 spaces. Here's the deal. In that room of 7 spaces, kids, young people have been creating poems, have been published in books, have made rap songs, been a part of poetry competitions, and then they go back up to their rooms or their cells, and they'll have these conversations with other students that are there, and then they think they BSing, right? So when it comes to something like this COVID time, we've been holding classes amongst their pod. The pod is like a good 15 to 20 like young people that are all in one living quarters, that all have like a cell inside of this living quarter space. Then they have an open area where there's like couches and you can watch TV, and then they have like a checkerboard table or something like but that's where they all are. But here's the deal. Those young people that we have been able to work with this entire time are also a part of that group, because they're the ones that really want free write. The young people that I've been working with, especially in the in JTDC, those young people are the high profile cases and the immediate transfers, which means that those cases will be transferred over to adult cases. So they're going to be at the juvenile detention center for a long extended period of time. There have been other programs that they can get involved with for them to be allowed a stay, which means they can spend a little bit more time inside the juvenile before they get transferred over to county jail. So like the barbershop program, we've developed free write sound and vision inside of the jail as well, so that they can learn as graduated young people on how to learn new skills, and would hopefully be able to get involved with us with the sound and vision that we have on the outside in our alumni program. But all this stuff has been geared towards that. So there's just a few things that they've allowed young people to do for them to also they do tours. Okay. So yeah,
but none of that is happening right now, right, Elgin?
No. No.
Right.
I'm just literally painting the picture of what the permissions were like before. So like a lot of the young people that have already graduated are still incarcerated in the juvenile detention center with nothing to do. So those young people are still there, but think about it. Now they can't go nowhere. They're in that pod with the rest of the young people 24/7. That's it. So the few things that they get is like a free write class and story catchers, I believe, is the other program that they've been allowing to have there. So, and they're only allowing the people who have been forefront of like been there for a long time. And they trust them to be there to work with young people. So going back to what it's like, right, to go teach a class. First off, in the juvenile detention center, I'm working with a group of young people that I have been working with for the past year and a half now. Super amped, all writers. They encourage each other, dope poets, all that kind of stuff, right? The first day I get back to being able to have a class with them, they was like, Elgin, yo, what up? You know what I mean? Like the smiles on their faces, I was like, this is about to suck. I ain't seen these kids. This is about to be whack. But they're so happy because they get to see someone else besides the people that's been in their space this whole time. And then they're like, first thing, El, can you play my song? As in, can you play the song that we made in our class? Right. I play the song. Now, here's the deal. I play the 2 songs that, the young person that made because, I got it on my DJ equipment or whatever. And the first thing that one of the students said is, yo, that's you? As in, the person on their pod goes, yo, that's you? The guard goes, yo, that was you? Oh my, I I didn't know y'all was doing that in free, right? So it's changing the environment. So half of the work is to work with young people, but the other half is to change the perspective of what our guards, of what these guards who are governing and thinking they're parents and trying to instill their own philosophy, even though they're really oppressing, you know,
Right.
what's really happening in these spaces, right? So we'll come in, we'll talk about a poem, we'll talk about we'll play a piece, and then we have them write. Some of the students will start freestyling, some of the students will start writing poems. Now that also, and then also that means a lot of the young people who we normally cannot work with in free write are also understanding what this program is about, who've never been able to experience it at all. But that's with a group of young people that we have absolutely established a relationship with. On the other hand, I'm also at the Illinois Youth Prison of Chicago, and I have no relationship with these young people. So I'm literally just some random dude showing up, and we trying to like convince y'all of what this free write thing is over this, right? And then also you gotta remember we're working with some people that probably don't know how to use the technology quite right. They ain't trained on how to use these things. So we're still trying to figure all these things out together. And now we gotta try to convince a group of like 5, sometimes 3, sometimes 1 young person to open up. And as they are starting to develop and open up by us asking them questions about what do you like? What kind of stuff do you enjoy? What is your favorite artist? How do you feel today? On a scale from 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? Right? Then they look over at the guard and they're like, because why is that so revolutionary? Because guards don't ask kids how they feel. They want you to comply. They don't worry about how you feel. They want you to shut up. They don't, you know what I'm saying? They don't want you playing around. You're holding a 17. Imagine when you 17 years old, you can't go no damn where. Look at how America is right now. Everybody been caught up in their home space. Like right as we were starting COVID, Free Write got our alumni to do a series called Confined and Isolated, where we had our alumni talk about their experience and what it was like to be in an enclosed space for a long period of time, because we knew as people who are able to freely move around and don't have to be told what to do every day besides go to our jobs, now we were going to have to stay here. So why don't we ask the experts and pay the experts who've been able to do this work, who had to spend all their time confined in one space, and then they share their knowledge on how they were able to cope. So after that, having a conversation with them, I could only imagine what this may be like, that you don't have another person able to visit you. You don't have your mama able to come and visit. You can't, that's it. You know, for someone like Ellen DeGeneres to say something like, oh my God, this feels like jail. No, it does not. It is not the same. You have no one overseeing you the entire time to tell you when to eat, to sit down. Don't get too excited. I had a conversation literally a day ago because the two young people that have been coming to our Zoom sessions have enjoyed the class so much that when they go back upstairs up to their pod, they are rapping with each other.
Yeah.
And they had a problem because the kids use curse words.
Right.
They are too excited after they leave your class. Can you tell them to calm down as they're going back upstairs?
Elgin, can you tell Ellen DeGeneres to shut the fuck up and to just FaceTime with George Bush? I mean, but I'm making a joke. But one of the things I'm really thinking about is, Amanda, one of the things you brought up yesterday was this notion of solitary confinement, that you young people are as actually a disciplinary tool that and can you talk a little bit about that? And even within the context of COVID-19, because I think that was one of the things that I couldn't sleep last night thinking about it after you told us.
Yeah, we should all be awake thinking about that. So we know that youth in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center are held in solitary confinement at very high rates. even as the population of the juvenile detention center has declined, we've seen a huge increase in the use of confinement, of solitary confinement, for punitive reasons in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center in particular. And so many of us who are advocates around these issues have raised that we need transparency of data and tracking and monitoring of the use of solitary confinement in the detention center, because we believe it should be eliminated. We know that solitary confinement is highly correlated with depression and suicide in youth in particular. Many of you listening may know the story of Khalif Browder, who was held pre-trial on Rikers Island as a youth. And as it turns out, probably would have been, should have been released, right, absolutely should have been released, but probably would have been found not guilty had his case gone to trial, and who committed suicide, right? The case really raised the profile of this issue, because we know that many thousands of young people are being held in juvenile detention centers and jails pre-trial, right? Pre-conviction for months or years, right? Because our court systems are slow and backed up, or because they're re-detained over and over again on technical violations of parole, of probation, and then put into punitive segregation, isolation, put into rooms by themselves where they can't be in contact with anyone else. And that's a form of torture, right? International bodies like the UN say it should be banned. And yet here in Cook County, in our own city, we're doing that to children. And so one of the things we're worried about right now, advocates are worried about right now during this COVID crisis, is that we know that young people who are already being held in segregation and isolation at huge rates are now being quarantined, right, inside of the institution. And you heard from Elgin how hard it is to get any kind of programs for youth inside of the detention center right now and inside of youth prisons right now, for good reason, right? We're afraid that if young people come down and attend classes or go to school or mix in the yard, they'll get sick, right? They're trying to contain the contagion. But at the same time, we're seeing that across the United States, young people in detention centers are being held in isolation in their rooms for 22 hours a day, 24 hours a day, right? And this is a form of torture, right? It's psychological torture for children. And so we're very worried about the mental health and well-being of young people who are being put into those conditions. And as a result, we think common sense tells us that young people, children, shouldn't be held in detention during this crisis, right? It's not safe. They've been removed from their parents or people who can care for them. They're living under terrible, dangerous conditions, and no one would want their own child sleeping on a 1-inch vinyl mattress on a concrete block in a room all by themselves for 16 or 20 or 22 hours a day for months on end during a pandemic, right? No parent would want that for their own child. So we shouldn't want it for any child in Cook County.
So I want to direct this question to you, Amanda, and also Elgin, about alternative futures. Where does abolition fit in this conversation, or does it at all? In light of, I guess, the recent protests and people calling for like defunding of police, you had protests of decarcerating these facilities for youth. What are some possible alternatives that people can speak to if we cannot be holding these children in these facilities during COVID or even at all?
So I think first it's really important to recognize that lots of research consensus that most youth in confinement in the United States could be provided shelter or housed in some other situation where they would pose no threat to public safety, right? That most young people are not detained because they're a threat to public safety, in fact, right? So when we talk about this, the argument is often, well, we can't just let people go and commit murders or, right, run around endangering others. And we know that for the most part, young people in juvenile detention in Cook County and elsewhere aren't actually doing those things, right? That's not why they're there. So I want to kind of clear that up before we move forward, right? And then say, this crisis is showing us, right? We have to find alternatives. When you ask what kinds of alternatives, I think we know, right? Many youth are held in the juvenile detention center in the first place because they have nowhere else to go, that's unacceptable, right? It's unacceptable that we've reached a point where we're using a juvenile detention center or a jail as shelter care for people who suffer from mental illness, who are unhoused, or who are very poor and have no parents, right? Those are not acceptable solutions. So first we have to address the root causes, which are largely rooted in poverty, lack of access to health care, right? And stop talking about this as if every problem can be solved with punishment, right? And it's not a very expensive problem to solve, right? We're talking about 196 children. It's not a lot, right? It's a very expensive choice to put them in the juvenile detention center, right? And there are many ways we could use those resources that are more holistic, that help young people heal, recover from trauma and move forward in their lives, graduate from high school, find stable housing, reconnect with their families. This is not one of them. We know that juvenile detention is really counter to everything we know about positive youth development and education for young people.
And Elgin, go get in this.
Okay, so first off, defund the police. We need to make sure that they don't need to buy more mecha suits and bull-ish. So if we take away a lot of their effing money, we can start investing in more communities. Also, we need to make sure that young people have ways to be able to make better choices, which means that we have to change the conditions in which they live. And I don't mean to have some rich ass person come to their neighborhood and buy up all their property and then move all their people out and all that bullshit. I mean, like, actually investing into the communities. I used to live I've lived basically almost damn near everywhere in Chicago. Sorry if I'm cursing right now, but
we love it.
In all of the different areas. So like, I used to live off of 69th and Wabash, and the only effing Jewel was off of 79th, right? So where are the local businesses and stores for them to be able to eat? There's plenty of housing, but where the fuck are they going to get food, right? People can continue. I'm tired of folks always saying, oh, well, all they do is sell drugs and da-da-da-da-da. So that means that people in their areas are paying for entertainment, right? But where else? Where's the food? Where are the adequate jobs for people to be able to reinvest into their own communities? That also cannot come without job training, without seeing more people that look like them doing the work that they need to be doing. How can a young person see themselves in a job if the only jobs that they see on television and any other places seem to be making money, but the people who are doctors or lawyers or all the other people, school teachers, principals, can get paid shit? Why would a young person want to get into a occupation that is a shit paying job when they can be divesting into something else? You cannot expect a young person to make better choices if you don't give a shit about the people who are actually putting in the work. So if you give them funds and stop paying police all this damn money, then maybe that's one way that we can fix some conditions in which they are living in. Also, I think a big reason that most of this stuff ain't happening is because it's extra work and nobody wants to do the damn work. So how about we start paying people to do the work? The other thing is we gotta for everyone that's listening in on the chat and everything like that, I want you to think for yourself for a second, right? When you first off, if you were to make a mistake, what would you want to happen to you, right? Start looking inward. What would you personally want or need, right? When I got in trouble as a kid, I went to see a counselor, right? Most young kids here, right? They saw a police officer. They have experienced nothing but incarceration in the police presence since they have been born, right? And also security, constant surveillance. This is a tracking device. This is surveillance. This is what our young people are growing. They cannot make mistakes now. Their mistake lives on forever, right? So we gotta. That's more work to just be done. I don't know. I'm rambling right now, man. But yeah, man. It's just like we gotta let kids develop and make mistakes, and then let's stop judging them about every little thing that they say or do. Allow them to be able to have conversations, sometimes with you not being in the room, right? So create more spaces for young people to be able to develop. One youth center is not enough, right? That's just some spitball ideas right off the top.
Right.
So I want to suggest that people who want to help support our work, go to the Free Right website and make a contribution, make a donation. Keep that work going. It's one of the only programs in the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center that's been able to continue during this crisis, giving young people an opportunity to express themselves and think about what the world should look like after this pandemic. Imagine a future without prisons. Imagine a future without youth in juvenile detention centers. And I also just want to say thank you, Ricardo and Charles and Jackie, for having us have this conversation tonight. I'm feeling really inspired, especially because I think when you asked me that question, Charles, about what should happen instead, this is an exciting moment when so many people in our community are starting to really think seriously about that question for the first time in my lifetime, are taking that question seriously. And so I hope that one of the things that comes out of this moment is that we'll really take seriously that 196 children in Cook County don't need to be held in a jail, right? That we need to find humane, healthy ways to support young people who've gotten into trouble, right? That are based in their own communities in which they can maintain their relationships with their families who love them and know them, in which they can continue to attend school, right? And in which we can nurture and guide them back onto the right path, right? Not take them away from everyone who knows them and loves them, right? And so that's what we've got to start to really think seriously about. And I think this pandemic shines a light on that, because we know this is one of many pandemics, right? Unfortunately, this is the beginning of a period of crisis, and there really is no safe way there's no safe future with people, 2.3 million people behind bars in the United States. We have to change the way that we think about safety and understand community.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because when we're talking about, alternatives, right? The people are often kind of thinking about, where are these people? Like, I think when we're talking about with respect to immigrant youth, right? People often say, well, if we let the migrant children out now, where are they going to go, right? And it's kind of like one of the worst logics, because I think, even thinking about the conversation around defund police, right, and prison abolition. Alongside that, we've seen, the conversation of abolish ICE. And as early as 2010, when Arizona was introducing its SB 1070 legislation, that was founded out to be authored by ALEC, which is a corporate PAC that has been long involved in the prison industrial complex. People started making connections between immigrant detention and prison industrial complex. And Alberto, you started us off right away. You didn't waste no time introducing the concept of abolition. And so I'm asking that because what does abolition look like through the lens of kind of immigrant youth detention right now, that you're imagining, and that Little Village Solidarity Network is imagining?
Well, I think one of the key things to look at would be the development of the autonomous zones in Seattle, and also, for example, the just commemoration of George Floyd over at 38th in Chicago and Minneapolis, right? Like how there's been like a surge, like there's pretty much been like, you could say like people just having conviviality, just getting together on the basis of joy, right? And how they're sharing this experience, how they're commemorating the life of George Floyd, how they're thinking about constructing another world. And those are things that are like examples, right? They may not be specific like blueprints for Chicago. They may manifest themselves in the manifold different ways here. or anywhere else for that matter, but we could definitely implement some of those things that they're like doing over at those specific places, and try to see all of those things through, right? And see if we could possibly envision a world like without prisons, right? A world without police, and actually have like those actual like connections with each other, right? That like development of trust with one another, to the point where we actually attempt to go and traverse like the logic of prison, right? Or the logic of the logic of policing, or even the logic of the normality, right? Because ever since the inception of COVID-19, there's been like an attempt, right? Like a fraud attempt to get back at the normal. And what is that nowadays, right? When it's possible that we can even have like a second wave of COVID-19 cases, according to Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci, right? So even if we try to conceive like a return to normal back as it was under neoliberalism, like I think that's pretty much like we're in new terrain, right? We're in new like political terrain. And there's definitely like a horizon, a possibility where we could like foreseeably like envision a future like in a collective fashion that there wasn't beforehand, right? Like beforehand, maybe we could talk about abolition, but it was all nevertheless like construed within the framework of like reform, because there wasn't like any possibility that we would have now ever since the start of COVID, and definitely since the uprisings as they've been happening like throughout different cities in the US. So yeah, I would just say sky's the limit, right?
Hey,
So we're
Beto, sorry, I have a question. I know that one of the challenges with protesting Heartland Alliance is that they're a huge organization. I know that whenever I, as a journalist, try to call them for comment, I get sent to like 10 different departments. It's extremely bureaucratic. They're extremely well funded. They're well connected, right? And they do happen to have like one or two programs that are decent. One of them is like their violence prevention program of violence interrupters that are out on the street. So how can you get more people to support your cause, or what would you tell them to convince them to join the movement for abolition, given that Heartland Alliance is, you know, well respected within the nonprofit industrial complex?
Right. Well, I think there's like a dent now that's been made, and there's like, you know, their like facade, you know, there has basically been like perforated now due to like all the unleashing of unwavering and relentless like information that's been put out there against Heartland Alliance, right? So at the start of our endeavor, right, to actually deconstruct and to move forward with the dismantling of Heartland Alliance, we definitely ran into some difficulty with some people, right? Because as you mentioned before, they're a nonprofit that doesn't just operate like children detention centers, but they also have, like, for example, a housing like sector, right? And they also have health, and they also like just basically have like this like ample amount of like social capital that they've gathered through this like rather benign work as a non-for-profit like industrial complex, right, entity. And we have to look at it as a counterinsurgent program, right? Tantamount to what pretty much placated like the Black liberation movement in the 60s, the indigenous like AIM movement in the 60s, and basically channel, right? And like funnel all the efforts of like well-intended, like, you know, undergrad and graduate students, like people of color, to actually seek forth like jobs at institutions like Heartland Alliance, right? So what we've done is actually like go to their job fairs, right? And we've disrupted their job fairs. In some cases, it's been like pretty much by handing people leaflets and like letting them know, right, from the get-go, that these places are actually incarcerating children. And they basically make a good sum of their profit, basically as the United States does, a lot of companies do, from like prison labor, right? And that's pretty much like a well-known fact that several companies like Whole Foods, like Aramark, basically make the brunt of their profit through prison labor. I'm sure it's pretty much the same with like Heartland Alliance, aside from like all the other benign things that they do, right? And that's pretty much like a microcosm of like the way that the US is pretty much like continuing its not only exploitation, right? But also like its unrelented, like gratuitous violence, so to speak, right? And also like this like just separating like people, right? And like from their families, from their connections to like the earth and their social relations. And yeah, we've also like disrupted like, you know, their galas, their anniversaries. Like we've gone to like several of the, like Evelyn Diaz, right? Who's like one of the, so to speak, like head honchos of like Heartland Alliance, has been colluded with like the CPD, right? And also the city, right? So these are people that have like political intricate connections. They're not just like benign people that don't know what's going on and need to be told what's going on, right? Especially at that level. And there's also been a video put out by a former employee of the Heartland Alliance, who I believe went and did a graduate studies at Loyola University, who actually like explains very well like the process by which she actually was integrated into Heartland Alliance, right? And how they actually like proceed to like put these children in these dire situations, which I would strongly recommend. It's on Little Village Solidarity Network on the Facebook page, or La Villita Solidaridad on Facebook.
Thank you so much, Alberto. So if you want to keep up with Alberto's work, check out the Little Village Solidarity Network's page. And if you want to keep up with Free Rights work, you can check out their website as well, Free Right Arts and Literacy, and make a donation to their work. I want to thank you all for being here so much. Let's give it up for Amanda, Elgin, and Alberto. Thank you all so much. I appreciate this conversation.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks.
everyone. That was great. Good to talk to you.
Great. We're
Everyone be safe out there.
For sure. We're going to keep our show moving. We'll totally let you all sign off and get back to your lives of changing the world right now. We're going to keep it moving with Jackie and our updates for the week.
Thank you guys so much. Is this the part where we sign off?
Yeah, you can totally sign off. Bye, Elgin. Bye, Amanda.
Nice to see you all.
For sure.
Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Let's keep it going, Jackie. Tell me what we got to be informed about this,
Hey,
this
everyone.
week.
I have a few announcements. So the city announced a new fund for immigrant families who, because of their status, did not qualify for the federal stimulus check or other government relief. This appears to be a lottery, very much like the one-time rent lottery and the loans for small businesses, both of which were exhausted immediately, like within 24 hours. So this money seems to be coming from foundations and private sources, not from the city budget, TIF, or any other slush funds that the city has. So it's definitely temporary help. The application opens June 22nd, and you can find it at the Resurrection Project website. The Resurrection Project is a nonprofit developer that has had problematic relationships with corrupt politicians. They actually remind me very much of Heartland Alliance in many ways. But we are in a crisis, so I would encourage people to share this resource with undocumented folks. There are several actions happening in the next couple of days. There's a peace march that will start off in both Little Village and North Lawndale and will eventually culminate in Douglas Park. As you all know, we had some of the worst racial division in decades, and now there is a lot of healing taking place across communities thanks to Black organizers and Latinx people who are having necessary conversations and establishing some semblance of peace, at least a truce based on race, right? Because we know that as much as gang members have played a role in this whole thing, it is harder to establish a long-lasting gang truce. So this is gonna take off at 5 p.m. I'm assuming they're gonna arrive at Douglas Park around 6 or 6:30, and I hope to see you all there. Tomorrow, there's also a demonstration to demand CPAC, which is short for the Civilian Police Accountability Council. And this would be an elected body that would have oversight of Chicago police. and would replace COPA, which is what we currently have, and it is appointed by the mayor, who we know has a cop-friendly background. So tomorrow at 53rd and King Drive, from 5 to 8 p.m., there is a rally organized by the Southsiders Organized for Unity and Liberation. Friday, there will be a march and caravan to protest the displacement of Black and working class people from Woodlawn. This is being organized by the activists who are demanding an Obama Center CBA to ensure affordable housing along the lakefront as it is being developed by the city. This takes place at 4:30 p.m. on 63rd and Blackstone. And then finally, as the George Floyd protests quiet down for a little bit, Minneapolis has banned the use of police chokeholds, and the majority of city council members have announced their plans to disband the police department. The LA City Council also proposed reducing LAPD's operating budget. And in Chicago, we have aldermen who are considering the creation of a reparations commission for Black Chicagoans. And there's also an effort by 9 aldermen or so who want to redirect $1.8 billion toward social services. And not just that, but to entirely get cops out of public schools. Thousands of protesters, activists, and some of the Democratic Socialists in City Council are taking it as far as to call on the mayor to defund CPD. It doesn't seem like they're advocating for the disbanding of the police, right? But at the very least, it's a strategy to cut funding in the same way that public education has been continuously defunded, right? So if other cities are defunding the police at this very moment, then when is it going to be our turn?
Lori Lightfoot is a cop, so she's like, I can't cut off my own people. And thank you, Jackie, for calling out the Resurrection Project's longstanding problematic politics. This morning, they were hosting the mayor there. She announced about the Chicago Resiliency Fund. Many of us tried to intercept the mayor there to ask her questions about when is she planning on defunding the police and when are we getting the relief that we deserve during the pandemic. She was not there. But I think it's so important to actually not just address these type of things, but also address the organizations that provide shelter, essentially, for and guard for a mayor at a time when so many Chicagoans are looking for relief and looking for accountability from her and from the way the city has abandoned so many communities during the pandemic and particularly during the protests. We're gonna close out. For all of those that checked out Jackie's updates, Jackie will send them to Janie and to Yasmin, and we will get them up on our social media. We're gonna close out this evening with Charles's Rona reflection for the night. Ooh. And now Charles' computer want to act up.
Stinney Jr. was who is George Stinney, 14-year-old boy convicted of brutally killing 2 white girls in Alcaloo, South Carolina. After a day of court.
Charles, can you start over just because the computer, your computer stalled?
Am I good?
Yeah, now you are.
Oh, my bad. The criminalization and caging of children is as American as genocide. June 16th marks the day that George Stinney Jr. was executed. A 14-year-old boy convicted of brutally killing 2 white girls in Alcaloo, South Carolina. After a day of court, 10 minutes of jury deliberation with no witnesses on Stinney to the gruesome. You know how many children were executed by their masters for resisting or simply existing. I've heard stories of some enslaved parents wanting to take the life of their own children, to save them from this country and a life of enslavement, to save them from chains, from cuffs. Japanese internment camps during World War II, actually during the time Stinney was executed, was a state-sanctioned home to children, infants, and young adults, not yet of voting age. At least 30,000 young people in internment camps. And then we turn our eyes to now in Cook County. Our guest Amanda Klonsky wrote in the Sun-Times last year that it costs $520 per day to detain one child the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. But last year, 2,760, and in the first quarter of this, 570.
Oh, we lost Charles, I think. Man, I'm so mad because this was so good. We're gonna go ahead and sign off for the evening. We'll be sharing Charles's "Got You" Rona reflection, and we will. Oh, Charles. We'll be sharing Charles' Rona reflection tomorrow. Tune in next week. We're going to be looking at it wraps up our series on sheltering and fighting to shelter in place, part 3, where we look at homelessness. Jax, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone, check out the Southside Weekly. They just released a recent issue that's also updating us on the that Jackie also updating us on. Jackie, you wrote it, right? The article around the shit that was popping off this past week in Black and brown communities.
Yep. Yeah, and we also have a timeline, a breakdown of like the most intense moments in downtown Chicago during the protests.
That's great. And so we'll be sharing Charles's Rona reflection on the Facebook page and on our social media, so you can check it out. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.